The sound of a hand striking flesh is unmistakable. It cuts through the low hum of jet engines and the clinking of crystal champagne flutes like a gunshot. In Seat 1A of Atlantic Skies Flight 909, a billionaire sat in silence, her cheek stinging, her dignity under siege. The flight attendant thought she was taking out the trash. She thought she was putting a hood rat in her place. She had no idea that the woman she just slapped didn't just buy a ticket. She bought the whole damn airline 3 hours ago. Karma isn't just coming. It's already at 30,000 feet, and it's about to crash land. The first-class cabin of Atlantic Skies, Flight 909, bound from JFK to London Heathrow, smelled of bergamot, pressed linen, and old money. It was a sanctuary of silence, designed to make the ultra-wealthy forget they were hurtling through the stratosphere in a metal tube. Dr. Vivian Carter adjusted the noise-canceling headphones over her ears. Though she wasn't listening to music, she was listening to the silence. It had been a hellish week. The acquisition of Horizon Group, the parent company of Atlantic Skies, had been a hostile, bloody corporate war that lasted 6 months. The ink on the contracts was barely dry. Technically, the press release wouldn't go out until Monday morning. For now, she was just a ghost in the machine she now owned. Vivienne, or Viv to the very few people she trusted, didn't look like the owner of a multinational aviation conglomerate. She looked like a woman who wanted to sleep for 14 hours. She wore a charcoal gray, oversized cashmere hoodie that cost more than most people's cars, matching sweatpants, and a pair of worn-in sneakers. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore zero makeup. She looked comfortable. To the untrained eye, she looked out of place. To Karen Miller, the lead flight attendant for the first-class cabin, Viv looked like a mistake. Karen was 45, with a blonde bob so stiff it could withstand a hurricane and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She treated the first-class cabin like her own personal fiefdom. She prided herself on maintaining standards. She could spot a non-rev passenger or an upgrade wanker from 50 paces. And she had clocked the woman in 1A the moment she boarded. Karen was already in a foul mood. The flight was delayed 30 minutes due to catering issues, and the passenger in 2B was already on his third complaints form. The passenger in 2B was Rogers Sinclair. Rogers was the kind of man who wore a suit on a plane because he didn't own casual clothing. He was the son of a British oil magnate, a man who had never heard the word no without firing the person who said it. He was sipping a scotch, his face flushed with impatience, staring daggers at the back of Viv's head. "Miss?" Rogers snapped, waving his empty glass at Karen as she passed. "Yes, Mr. Sinclair? Another scotch?" Karen's voice was a practiced coo, sugary and fake. "Forget the scotch," Rogers hissed, leaning in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "What is that doing here?" He gestured with his chin toward Viv. Karen followed his gaze. She tightened her lips. "I'm not sure, sir. Perhaps a last-minute upgrade." "She's wearing pajamas," Rogers scoffed, loud enough for the cabin to hear. "It's disgraceful. I pay $15,000 for a seat to avoid the riffraff, not to sit next to someone who looks like they just robbed a bodega." Vivian heard him. The noise-canceling headphones were good, but Rogers's entitlement was a frequency that could penetrate lead. She didn't turn around. She just closed her eyes. "Don't engage," she told herself. "You own the airline. You can fire him from flying on Monday. Just sleep." But Karen Miller was eager to please. Rogers Sinclair was a Platinum Key member. His family had been flying Atlantic Skies since the propeller days. If Mr. Sinclair was unhappy, Karen was unhappy. And Karen preferred to make others unhappy instead. She walked over to seat 1A. She didn't approach from the front, with a smile. She loomed over the side. "Excuse me," Karen said. Viv opened one eye. She slid the headphones down to her neck. "Yes? I need to see your boarding pass," Karen said. "No, please. No, ma'am. Just a demand." Viv sighed. She was exhausted. "I showed it at the gate and at the jet bridge. And I need to see it now," Karen said, her voice raising a decibel. "We have a discrepancy in the manifest." There was no discrepancy. Viv knew it. Karen knew it. But Viv was too tired to fight. She dug into the pocket of her hoodie, pulled out her phone, and tapped the screen. She held up the digital boarding pass. 1A. Carter, Vivian, first class. Karen stared at the screen. She frowned. It wasn't the reaction she wanted. She wanted a mistake. She wanted a reason. This is a screenshot, Karen accused. I need to see the live app. People forge screenshots all the time. Vivienne blinked, slowly. It is the live app. She tapped the screen, scrolling down to show the QR code refreshing. It doesn't look right, Karen snapped. Let me see your ID. My ID? Viv sat up straighter now. The exhaustion was being replaced by a low simmering heat in her chest. Is this standard procedure? Are you asking Mr. Sinclair for his ID? Mr. Sinclair is a recognized frequent flyer, Karen said, her voice dripping with condensation. You, however, do not fit the profile of our first-class clientele. And what profile is that? Viv asked softly. The white profile? The air in the cabin sucked out of the room. Rogers audibly gasped. Oh, playing the race card now? Typical. Karen's face went splotchy red. How dare you? This is about security. You are making the other passengers uncomfortable. I haven't said a word, Viv pointed out. I was sleeping. Your attire is inappropriate, Karen pivoted, grasping at straws. We have a dress code for first class. No, you don't, Viv said calmly. I know the policy manual of this airline better than you do. Section 4. Paragraph 2. Comfort is paramount. There is no dress code for paying passengers. Karen froze. She hated being corrected, especially by someone she deemed beneath her. She felt her authority slipping. She felt Rogers watching her, judging her ability to control her cabin. I am the lead flight attendant, Karen seethed, leaning in close, invading Viv's personal space. And I have the authority to remove passengers who are disruptive. You are being aggressive. I am sitting down, Viv said, her voice steady but cold as ice. You are the one standing over me. You are the one shouting. I am not shouting, Karen shouted. You need to lower your voice, Viv said. And you need to get out of my face. Don't you tell me what to do, Karen spat. You think because you scrambled up enough miles or scammed a system upgrade, you belong here? You don't. You belong in the back. In fact, I think there's a seat in 42E near the lavatory. Gather your things. Vivienne looked at her. Really looked at her. She saw the fear behind the anger, the insecurity. But she didn't care. I'm not moving. If you don't move, I will have you removed, Karen threatened. Try it, Viv said. It happened in a blur. Karen, fueled by adrenaline, embarrassment, and years of unchecked bias, lost control. She reached out to grab Viv's shoulder, to physically haul her up. Viv instinctively raised her hand to block the grab. Karen saw the movement and reacted. Thwack. Karen's open palm connected with Vivienne's cheek. It wasn't a tap. It was a full-force slap. The sound echoed. Rogers stopped drinking his scotch. The businessman in 3A dropped his iPad. The cabin went dead silent. Vivienne sat there, her head turned slightly to the right from the impact. Her cheek burned. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She slowly turned her head back to face Karen. Karen stood there, hand hovering, eyes wide. She looked shocked at her own action, but then her expression hardened. She doubled down. You attacked me, Karen shrieked, clutching her own wrist as if she had been hit. She hit me. Did you see that? She assaulted me. Vivienne didn't speak. She didn't scream. She didn't lunge. She just stared at Karen Miller, and in that stare, there was no fear. There was only the terrifying calm of a predator who had just decided the prey was no longer worth playing with. You, Vivienne whispered, have just made the worst mistake of your life. The cabin was in chaos. The veneer of polite society had shattered. She hit the attendant, Rogers Sinclair bellowed, standing up to play the hero. I saw it. The woman in one, lashed out. That is a lie, said a quiet voice from 4A. An elderly woman, draped in pearls. The attendant struck her. Stay out of this, Karen snapped at the old woman. She was hyperventilating now, fully committed to her fabrication. She grabbed the interphone handset on the wall. Captain, security. I have a code red in first class. Passenger assault. I need immediate assistance. Vivienne remained in her seat. Her cheek was throbbing, a bright red handprint blossoming on her dark skin. She could feel the heat of it. She resisted the urge to touch it. She needed to be a statue. Any movement would be interpreted as aggression. Two men in dark windbreakers rushed through the curtain from the galley. They weren't air marshals, the flight hadn't taken off yet, they were Port Authority police who had been standing on the jet bridge, chatting with the pilot. What's the problem? The first officer, a burly man with a buzz cut named Officer Caleb, barked. Her, Karen pointed a shaking finger at Viv. She refused to show her ticket, she became belligerent, and when I tried to calm her down, she struck me. She's drunk or on drugs. Caleb turned his eyes on Viv. He didn't see a billionaire. He saw a hoodie. He saw a black woman in a space he subconsciously felt she didn't belong. He saw a threat. Ma'am, get up, Caleb ordered, his hand resting near his belt. I have done nothing wrong, Viv said, her voice clear and articulate. If you check the cabin cameras, get up, Caleb shouted. We'll check the cameras at the station. Right now, you're off this plane. The second officer, Mike Davis, was younger. He looked at Viv, then at Karen. He noticed the red mark on Viv's face. He noticed Karen had no marks. John, Davis said softly to his partner. Wait a second. Look at the passenger's face. I don't care about her face, Caleb growled. The flight crew wants her off. That's federal law. We remove her, we sort it out later. He reached for Viv's arm. Viv pulled her arm back. Do not touch me. Resisting arrest, Karen shrieked gleefully. See? She's violent. I am not resisting, Viv said. I am informing you. You are about to remove the owner of this aircraft from her own property. I suggest you tread very carefully. Caleb laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. Yeah, right. And I'm the Queen of England. Lady, you're in a hoodie. You don't own squat. Rogers, Viv said, looking past the police to the man in 2B. Rogers Sinclair, CEO of Sinclair Oil. Your stock is down 4% this quarter because your Malaysian refinery has a leak you're trying to cover up. Rogers froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Viv turned to the elderly woman in 4A. Martha Vance, retired judge, New York Southern District. You presided over the Elliott versus State case in '98. The woman nodded, eyes wide. I did. Viv turned back to Caleb. And you are Officer John Caleb. Badge number 4922. You have 3 excessive force complaints on your record in the last 2 years. Do you want a 4th? The cabin went silent again. The air was thick with tension. Caleb looked unnerved. How did she know that? Who are you? Officer Davis asked, stepping forward, his tone respectful. My name is Dr. Vivian Carter, she said. I am the CEO of Carter Capital. And as of 9 a.m. this morning, Carter Capital acquired a 51% controlling stake in Horizon Group, the parent company of Atlantic Skies. She reached into her pocket again. Caleb flinched. Relax, she said dryly. I am getting my phone. She pulled it out and dialed a number. She put it on speaker. Ring. Ring. This is ridiculous, Karen scoffed, though her hands were trembling violently. Speaking a call. Just drag her off. The line clicked. A deep, authoritative voice filled the cabin. Vivienne, is everything all right? We weren't expecting to hear from you until you landed in London. Hello, David, Viv said. Karen stopped breathing. She knew that voice. Every employee at Atlantic Skies knew that voice. It was the voice that welcomed them in the mandatory training videos. It was David Thorne, the CEO of Atlantic Skies. David, Viv continued, staring directly into Karen's eyes. I'm currently sitting in seat 1A on flight 909. I have a slight problem. Your lead flight attendant, a Miss Miller, just slapped me in the face and is currently trying to have the police drag me off the plane because she doesn't like my sweatpants. There was a silence on the line so profound it felt like the phone had died. She did what? David Thorne's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of a guillotine blade. She slapped me, David. And now Officer Caleb here is threatening to arrest me. Put him on, David roared. Put the captain on. Put everyone on. Right now. Vivienne extended the phone toward Karen. I think, Viv said, a cold smile touching her lips. It's for you. Karen stared at the phone as if it were a bomb. The color drained from her face, leaving her pasty and gray. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The hoodie, the confidence, the knowledge. She hadn't just slapped a passenger. She had slapped the boss. The cockpit door opened. Captain James Anderson stepped out, looking annoyed at the delay. He saw the police. He saw Karen. He saw Viv. Captain Anderson had flown Viv's private jet for 2 years before moving to commercial. He knew her. He liked her. He stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes went to the red mark on her face. Then to Karen. "Dr. Carter?" the captain said, his voice horrified. "My God, what happened?" Vivienne didn't look away from Karen. "Ask her." Captain James Anderson didn't just walk into the cabin. He stormed in with the kind of authority that overrides badges and bank accounts. He was a man of few words, a former Air Force pilot who had flown sorties in the Gulf before retiring to the lucrative world of private aviation, specifically flying doctor. Vivienne Carter's Gulfstream G650 for 3 years before she recommended him to Atlantic skies. He looked at the scene, the police officers looming, the weeping, indignant flight attendant, and his former boss, now his current boss's boss, sitting in a hoodie with a welt rising on her cheek. "Captain," Officer Caleb started, trying to regain control of the situation. "We have a disruptive passenger who assaulted the crew. We are removing her." "You aren't removing anyone," Captain Anderson said, his voice low and dangerous. He stepped between Caleb and Vivienne. "Officer, step back, now." Caleb bristled. "Excuse me? I have a federal mandate, and I am the pilot in command of this aircraft." Anderson cut him off. "Under federal aviation regulations, I decide who flies and who doesn't. And I am telling you, you are making a mistake that will cost you your badge." He turned to Vivienne. The look in his eyes was one of genuine pain. "Dr. Carter, are you all right?" "I've been better, James," Vivienne said dryly, still holding the phone out. "David is on the line. He wants a word." Anderson took the phone. "Mr. Thorne?" The passengers strained to hear. The first-class cabin was so quiet you could hear the ice melting in Roger Sinclair's scotch. "James," David Thorne's voice barked from the speakerphone, loud enough for Karen to hear. "Is it true? Did a member of your crew strike Dr. Carter?" Anderson looked at Karen. She was trembling now, her hands clasped in front of her like a naughty schoolgirl. Her arrogance was evaporating, replaced by a primal, shaking terror. "I see a mark on Dr. Carter's face, sir," Anderson reported, his eyes locked on Karen. "It appears consistent with a strike. Miss Miller is the only crew member present." "Put her on," David ordered. Anderson handed the phone to Karen. She didn't want to take it. She recoiled as if it were a venomous snake. "Take it," Anderson commanded. Karen took the phone with shaking hands. "Mr. Thorne?" Her voice cracked. "Sir, you have to understand. She didn't look like. I felt threatened." "Threatened?" David Thorne's voice was ice cold. "By a woman sitting down? By a woman who just bought this airline to save it from bankruptcy? Do you have any idea what you have done, Miss Miller?" I was following protocol," Karen wailed, looking around for support. She looked at Roger Sinclair. "Mr. Sinclair, tell him she was aggressive." Roger Sinclair, the man who had started it all, suddenly found the bottom of his glass very interesting. He turned his head toward the window, refusing to make eye contact. He knew how the wind was blowing. He wasn't going to go down with the ship. "Mr. Sinclair?" Karen pleaded. "I saw nothing," Rogers muttered, loud enough to be heard. "I was reading my paper." Karen gasped. The betrayal hit her hard. "You liar. You told me she was riffraff. You told me to check her ticket." "Enough," David Thorne interrupted. "Miss Miller, listen to me very carefully. You are relieved of duty, effective immediately. You are to surrender your badge and your airport ID to Captain Anderson. You are to gather your personal effects and deplane. You are fired." "Fired?" Karen shrieked. "You can't fire me. I have 20 years of seniority." "The union will." "The union won't touch this," David said. "Assaulting a passenger is a felony. Assaulting the owner of the airline is, well, it's career suicide. And Miss Miller? If you don't get off that plane in 2 minutes, I will instruct the officers to arrest you for assault and battery. We have the cabin recordings. I'm watching the feed right now." Karen froze. She looked up at the ceiling, spotting the small, dark dome of the security camera she had forgotten about. Officer Caleb, realizing the tide had turned violently, stepped away from Vivienne. He looked at Karen. He looked at the mark on Vivienne's face. He did the math. "Ma'am," Caleb said to Karen, his tone completely different now, "I think you better do as the man says." Karen looked at Vivienne. For the first time, she really looked at her. She didn't see a hood rat. She saw a woman who possessed a power Karen could only dream of. A power that didn't need to shout. Karen stammered. I'm sorry, I didn't know. Vivian stood up then. She was tall, taller than Karen. She looked down at the flight attendant. That is the problem, Karen, Vivian said softly. You treated me like garbage because you didn't know I had power. If I had been a regular passenger, you would have gotten away with it. You would have thrown a black woman off a plane for wearing a hoodie, and you would have laughed about it in the galley. Vivian leaned in. You aren't sorry you did it. You're sorry you did it to me. Vivian turned to the captain. James, get her off my plane. Captain Anderson held out his hand. Badge. Now. With shaking fingers, Karen unpinned the silver wings from her uniform. The wings she had worn for 2 decades. She handed them over. Then she reached into her pocket and handed over her lanyard. Escort her out, Anderson told Officer Caleb. Wait, Vivian said. One more thing. She pointed to Rogers Sinclair. Him too. Rogers choked on his air. Me? I haven't done anything. I'm a Platinum Key member. You incited a disturbance, Vivian said, her voice boring into him. You harassed a fellow passenger, and frankly, I don't like your face. This is a private business, Mr. Sinclair, and I reserve the right to refuse service to anyone. Get out. You can't do this. Rogers spluttered, standing up, his face purple. My father knows the governor, and I own the plane, Vivian said simply. Get off, or I'll have Officer Caleb drag you off. Caleb, eager to make up for his earlier blunder, stepped toward Rogers. Let's go, sir. Don't make this hard. The walk to the front of the plane was the longest journey of Karen Miller's life. She had walked these aisles thousands of times, serving drinks, fluffing pillows, judging people. Now, she was the spectacle. Every eye in first class was on her. She could feel their judgment. It burned hotter than the slap she had delivered. But the real nightmare was just beginning. Because as Karen and Rogers were escorted off the plane, a young teenager in seat 3B lowered his phone. He had been recording on TikTok Live since the moment Karen started shouting. The viewer count was already at 45,000. And it was climbing. The terminal at JFK was buzzing with the usual chaotic energy of a Friday afternoon. But near Gate 42, the atmosphere was different. It was electric. News travels fast. Internet news travels at the speed of light. By the time Karen Miller was escorted off the jet bridge and into the terminal, the video titled Billionaire Boss Slapped by Karen Flight Attendant Instant Karma was trending hashon on Twitter, TikTok, and Reddit. Karen didn't check her phone. She was too busy trying to explain herself to Officer Caleb, who was currently reading her rights. You have the right to remain silent, Caleb droned, handcuffing her hands behind her back in front of the gate agents, the standby passengers, and the crew of the next flight. I don't understand, Karen sobbed. I was just doing my job. She provoked me. Save it for the judge, Officer Davis said, much less sympathetically than before. Rogers Sinclair was standing a few feet away, furiously typing on his BlackBerry, trying to call his lawyers. He looked up and saw a group of college students pointing their phones at him. That's him, one girl shouted. That's the guy from the video, the racist guy. I am not racist, Rogers shouted back, which is the #1 thing racists shout when caught. I am a victim of circumstance. Back on the plane, the atmosphere had shifted from tension to a strange, giddy excitement. The passengers in first class were looking at Vivian with awe. Vivian, however, was done. She picked up her bag. James, she said to the captain, I can't fly on this bird today. Bad energy. I understand, Dr. Carter, Anderson said. What do you want to do? I can have the G650 prepped at Teterboro in an hour. No, Vivian said. I need to handle this here. This is going to be a PR nightmare, and I need to control the narrative before the board tries to spin it. She looked at the other passengers. I apologize for the delay, everyone. Open bar is on me for the rest of the flight, and I'll be crediting everyone's account with 50,000 miles for the disturbance. A cheer went up from the cabin. Even the stiff businessman in 3A clapped. Vivian walked off the plane. She didn't walk off in shame. She walked off like a warrior leaving the arena. As she stepped into the terminal, she was greeted by a wall of noise. The paparazzi, usually reserved for movie stars, had somehow been alerted. Vivian suspected the teenager in 3B had tagged TMZ. Flashes popped. Microphones were shoved in her face. Dr. Carter, is it true you bought the airline just to fire her? Dr. Carter, are you pressing charges? Dr. Carter, how is your face? Vivian stopped. She raised a hand. The crowd quieted down. She looked into the nearest camera. I bought the airline, she said, her voice projecting clearly without shouting, because it was a failing business with a toxic culture. Today, you saw a symptom of that culture. Disrespect. Bias. The assumption that someone's worth is determined by their clothes or their skin color. She touched her cheek, where the red mark was now turning a distinct shade of purple. This, she pointed to the bruise. This is a lawsuit. But more importantly, it's a lesson. To every employee at Atlantic Skies, and to every passenger, the era of entitlement is over. We are treating people with dignity. And if you can't handle that, you can walk. She turned to walk away, but a man in a sharp suit pushed through the crowd. It was Jessica Pearson. No, that's a show. It was Robert Gantry, the head of Atlantic Sky's legal department. He looked like he was having a heart attack. Dr. Carter, Gantry gasped, wiping sweat from his forehead. Please, no more statements. The stock is fluctuating. We need to get you to the VIP lounge. I'm not hiding, Robert, Vivian said. And you have work to do. Me? Gantry asked. Yes, Vivian said. I want a full audit of Karen Miller's employment history. I want to know every complaint ever filed against her. And I want to know why she was still employed. And while you're at it, ban Rogers Sinclair from all Atlantic Skies flights. Permanently. And his family. His family? Gantry stammered. Dr. Carter, the Sinclairs spend nearly $500,000 a year with us. Not anymore, Vivian said. I don't want their money. It's dirty. Do it, Robert, or I'll find a general counsel who will. She walked toward the VIP lounge, the crowd parting for her like the Red Sea. Inside the lounge, it was quiet. But the storm was raging outside. Karen Miller was currently being processed at the airport police station. She was sitting in a holding cell, still wearing her Atlantic Skies uniform, stripped of her wings. She was allowed one phone call. She didn't call a lawyer. She called her husband, Greg. Greg, she wept into the receiver. You have to come get me. It's all a misunderstanding. Karen? Greg's voice sounded distant. I just saw the video. It's on CNN, Karen. My boss just texted me. He sent me a link. It's not what it looks like. You slapped a passenger, Karen. You slapped the owner. Do you know what the comments are saying? They're digging up everything. Someone found your old Facebook posts, the ones about, you know. Karen's blood ran cold. The posts. The rants she had written 3 years ago during the protests. She thought they were private. I can't come get you, Greg said. The press is on our front lawn. I can't leave the house. You're on your own, Karen. The line went dead. Karen Miller stared at the phone. The receiver dangled from the cord, swinging back and forth like a pendulum, counting down the seconds of her former life. But if Karen thought hitting rock bottom was bad, she was about to discover that rock bottom had a basement. Because Vivian Carter wasn't just satisfied with a firing and an arrest. Vivian Carter was a strategist. And she had decided that Karen Miller was going to be the example that changed the industry. Vivian sat in the private suite of the VIP lounge, holding an ice pack to her face. She pulled out her iPad and opened her email. She began to type a message to the board of directors. Subject: restructuring. She didn't know it yet, but the man sitting across from her in the lounge was watching her. He was an older man, dressed in a bespoke suit. He had been watching the news on the TV in the corner. He stood up and walked over to her. Dr. Carter? He asked. Vivian looked up, guarded. Yes? My name is William H. Macy. No, sorry. My name is William Hastings. Vivian recognized the name immediately. William Hastings was the senior partner at Hastings, O'Connor, and Fry, the most vicious, successful litigation firm in New York. They were known as the Vipers of Wall Street. I saw what happened, Hastings said, gesturing to the TV. And I saw how you handled it. Are you here to offer representation? Vivian asked. I have legal counsel. No, Hastings smiled. I'm not here to represent you. I'm here because I was on a flight with Karen Miller 3 months ago. My niece, who has autism, was having a difficult time. Miss Miller threatened to tape her mouth shut. Vivian's eyes widened. She did what? We filed a complaint, Hastings said. Atlantic Skies sent us a $50 voucher and closed the case. They said it was, he said, she said. Hastings reached into his briefcase and pulled out a file. It was thick. I've been building a class action lawsuit against Atlantic Skies for systemic discrimination and abuse of passengers for 2 years, Hastings said. I have 40 plaintiffs, all with stories like mine, all involving a culture that protects people like Karen Miller. He placed the file on the table. I was going to sue your company for $300 million next week, Hastings said, but now I see you might be the ally I didn't know I had. Vivian looked at the file. Then she looked at Hastings. Mr. Hastings, Vivian said, a slow smile spreading across her face, despite the pain in her cheek. Sit down. I think we need to talk about a settlement, but not the kind you're thinking of. Oh? I don't want to fight the lawsuit, Vivian said. I want to join it. Hastings blinked. Excuse me? You want to join a lawsuit against your own company? I want to burn the rot out, Vivian said. And sometimes, the best way to rebuild a house is to set fire to the foundation. Let's expose it all. Karen Miller is just the beginning. The alliance between Dr. Vivian Carter and William Hastings was the kind of secret that could topple stock markets. While the world watched the viral clip of the slap on a loop, the two of them sat in the VIP lounge, dissecting the anatomy of a toxic corporation. You realize, Hastings said, tapping his pen on the thick file of plaintiff statements, that if we proceed with this, Atlantic Skies stock will tank. You will lose millions in personal valuation overnight. Vivian took a sip of iced water. It's already tanking, William. The market hates uncertainty. What it loves is a turnaround story. I'm willing to lose $100 million this week to build a billion-dollar culture next year. But I need to know everything. What else did Karen Miller do? Hastings opened the file to a marked page. Karen isn't just a bad apple. She's the ringleader. We have statements from 3 junior flight attendants, all of color, who claimed Miller purposefully sabotaged their performance reviews. She called them diversity hires in the galley. But here is the kicker. She has a protector in HR. Who? Vivian demanded. Simon LaGrange, Hastings said, VP of Human Resources. He's the one who buried the complaint about my niece. He's the one who buried the other assaults. And rumor has it, he and Karen have a personal history. Vivian's eyes narrowed. Get him on the list. We aren't just firing Karen. We are cleaning house. Meanwhile, across town, Karen Miller was out on bail. She sat in the cramped office of Richard Vane, a strip mall attorney who specialized in DUI defense and slip-and-fall cases. He was the only lawyer who would take her call. The high-end firms wouldn't touch her with a 10-foot pole. It's a setup, Karen screeched, pacing the worn carpet. She baited me. She came on that plane looking like a homeless person on purpose. It was entrapment. Richard Vane rubbed his temples. He smelled of stale coffee and desperation. Karen, entrapment is a police term. This isn't that. You slapped a billionaire on 4K video. We have zero defense for the assault. So I just roll over? Karen demanded. No, Vane said, a greasy smile appearing. We countersue. We sue for intentional infliction of emotional distress. We claim she created a hostile environment to provoke you. We claim you were under extreme stress due to Atlantic Skies' understaffing policies. We paint you as the victim of a corporate tyrant who set you up to fail. Can we win that? Karen asked. Probably not, Vane admitted. But Vivian Carter just bought the company. She wants this to go away. If we make enough noise, if we threaten to drag this out in the press for years, she might cut a check just to shut you up. A settlement. Maybe $1 million or $2 million. Karen's eyes lit up. $1 million. That was more than she'd make in 10 years of flying. Do it, she said. Destroy her. At the same time, Roger Sinclair was launching his own offensive. Humiliated and banned, he sat in his penthouse overlooking Central Park, swirling a glass of very expensive cognac. I want her destroyed, Rogers barked into his phone. He was talking to a fixer, a digital mercenary named Silas who specialized in ruining reputations. Find dirt on Vivian Carter. I don't care if you have to make it up. Did she cheat on her taxes? Did she have an affair? Is she secretly funding a warlord? Find something. She's clean, Mr. Sinclair, Silas's distorted voice replied. She's a philanthropist. She builds schools in Detroit. Nobody is that clean, Rogers shouted, throwing his glass against the fireplace. Look harder. I want a story in the tabloids by tomorrow morning that makes her look like the devil incarnate. I want the world to forget I was a racist on a plane and remember her as a fraud. It'll cost you triple, Silas said. Done. The war had begun. But neither Karen nor Rogers realized they were fighting a general who had already mapped out the entire battlefield. 3 days later, the atmosphere in New York was feverish. The slap heard round the world had sparked a national conversation about customer service, race, and corporate power. Karen Miller, emboldened by her lawyer, decided to go on a morning talk show. It was a risky move, but she was desperate to control the narrative before the court date. On live television, Karen sat wearing a soft pastel cardigan, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. I was just so tired, Karen told the sympathetic host. We work 16-hour shifts, and this woman, she was so aggressive. She got in my face. I felt terrified. I reacted out of fear. And now the richest woman in the world is trying to crush a single working mother. Karen's children were in their 20s, but working mother polled better. The host nodded gravely. So you feel you are the victim here? I am, Karen sobbed. I am a victim of the elite. Twitter was divided. The Karen Defense Squad started posting hashtags like #StandWithKaren and #EatTheRich. For a moment, it looked like the tide might turn. Rogers Sinclair's paid bots were amplifying the message, flooding social media with fake stories about Vivian Carter firing pregnant women and kicking puppies. Then came the press conference. Vivian called it for 2 p.m. at the Atlantic Skies headquarters. The room was packed. Every major network was there. Vivian walked onto the stage. She wasn't wearing a hoodie this time. She was wearing a sharp, navy blue power suit that looked like it was cut from steel. She stood at the podium, flanked by William Hastings and Captain James Anderson. Good afternoon, Vivian said. Her voice was steady, betraying no emotion. Over the last 72 hours, there has been a lot of storytelling. Miss Miller went on television this morning to claim she is a victim of an aggressive passenger. Mr. Rogers Sinclair has been funding a smear campaign online suggesting I am unfit to lead. She paused. The room was silent. I believe in transparency, Vivian continued. Miss Miller claims she acted out of fear. She claims I was aggressive. She claims this was an isolated incident caused by exhaustion. Vivian gestured to the massive screen behind her. We recovered the data from the cabin management system of the aircraft. Atlantic Skies planes are equipped with audio sensors in the galley to monitor noise levels for sleeping passengers. It also records conversation. Karen, watching from her lawyer's office, felt her stomach drop. Play the tape, Vivian ordered. The audio crackled over the speakers. It was crystal clear. Audio voice, Karen. Ugh, look at seat 1A. Another ghetto lottery winner. I bet she used stolen miles. I'm gonna find a reason to kick her off before Wheels Up. Watch this. Audio voice. Another flight attendant. Karen. Don't. She's sleeping. Audio voice. Karen. I don't care. I don't like her look. It brings down the property value of the cabin. I'm going to make her cry. I love making them cry. The press room gasped. A collective "oh my God" rippled through the reporters. Vivian looked directly into the camera. I love making them cry, she repeated. That is not fear, Miss Miller. That is premeditated malice. That is racism wrapped in a uniform. She clicked a remote. A new document appeared on the screen. And as for Mr. Rogers Sinclair, Vivian said, her voice dropping an octave, who claims he is an innocent bystander. The screen showed an email chain. It was from Rogers Sinclair to Simon LaGrange, the corrupt HRVP. From Sinclair Aerobase, SinclairOil.com, to S. LaGrange at Atlantic Skies, com. Subject: The Miller issue. Simon, your girl Karen Miller was a bit rough on my flight to Paris last week. She spilled wine on my wife. But don't fire her. She's fun. She let me smoke in the lavatory. Keep her on. I'll send a bonus to your personal account. Vivian let that sink in. Bribery, Vivian said. Collusion. And endangering the safety of an aircraft by smoking on board. Mr. Sinclair, I am forwarding this email to the FAA and the FBI. You aren't just banned from flying. You are looking at federal charges. Back in his penthouse, Rogers Sinclair stared at the TV. He dropped his remote. His face went white. This wasn't just a PR crisis anymore. This was prison. Vivian wasn't done. Finally, she said, turning to William Hastings, I am announcing today that Atlantic Skies is settling the class action lawsuit brought by Mr. Hastings on behalf of 42 aggrieved passengers. We are paying out $50 million in damages. The reporters scribbled furiously. A CEO settling a lawsuit against her own company in record time? And, Vivian added, we are countersuing Karen Miller, Simon LaGrange, and Rogers Sinclair for damages to the brand. We will be seeking every penny they have earned while abusing their positions. She leaned into the microphone. To the employees of Atlantic Skies, if you are like Karen, leave now. If you are here to serve with dignity, you just got a raise. To the public, the skies are open again, and they are clean. She walked off the stage. It was a mic drop of nuclear proportions. But the hard karma wasn't over. The legal system moves slowly, but the street moves fast. Karen Miller's lawyer, Richard Vane, watched the press conference. He looked at the audio evidence. He looked at the email. He realized his emotional distress suit was dead on arrival. He picked up his phone and called Karen. Taryn, did you see it? Karen was hyperventilating. She had the galley tapes. Is that legal? Doesn't matter, Vane said cold. You lied to me. You told me you were innocent. You didn't tell me you planned it. You have to help me. I can't help you, Vane said. I'm dropping you as a client. And Karen, my bill is due. That's $5,000. I expect it by Monday. He hung up. Karen sat alone in her living room. Her husband had left to stay at a hotel. Her children weren't answering her texts. She had no job, no lawyer, and the entire world knew she loved making them cry. Then, a knock at the door. Karen stood up, trembling. Was it the police? She opened the door. It wasn't the police. It was a process server. And behind him, a camera crew from a documentary team. Karen Miller? The server said, handing her a stack of papers thick enough to stop a bullet. You are being sued by Atlantic Skies, Doctor. Vivian Carter, and the families of the victims. And, oh yeah, he pointed to the driveway. A tow truck was backing up to her leased Mercedes. Repo man. The server shrugged. Mr. LaGrange was paying for the lease, apparently. His assets were frozen an hour ago. So, the car goes. Karen watched as her car was hooked up. She watched the camera crew filming her disgrace. She didn't cry. She couldn't. She was frozen. Just like she had frozen when Vivian Carter said, I own the plane. But the twist that would seal her fate and Rogers's was yet to come. Because Simon LaGrange, the corrupt HR head, wasn't going to go down alone. He had been keeping his own insurance policy, a hidden ledger of every favor he had ever done for the elites on Atlantic Skies. And he was about to hand it to Vivian Carter in exchange for immunity. The rain in New York that Tuesday was relentless, washing the grime off the city streets. But it couldn't wash away the stains spreading through the corporate offices of Atlantic Skies. Simon LaGrange, the VP of Human Resources who had protected Karen Miller for years, was a man who knew how to survive. He wasn't loyal to Karen. He wasn't loyal to Rogers Sinclair. He was loyal to his pension. At 11 p.m., he met Vivian Carter in a diner in New Jersey. He looked like a man on the run, unshaven, wearing a baseball cap, twitchy. You came alone? Simon asked, eyeing the door. Just me and my driver, Vivian said, sliding into the booth. He's outside. He's former Mossad. I wouldn't try anything, Simon. Simon slid a black, heavy-duty flash drive across the sticky table. This is it, Simon whispered. The gold list. It's a digital ledger of every favor I did for the VIPs, every time I looked the other way. Every time a flight attendant was fired because a rich guy didn't like her perfume. Every safety violation we buried because it would delay a high-value flyer. Vivian picked up the drive. Does it have Sinclair? Sinclair? Simon laughed, a dry hacking sound. Sinclair is the star of the show. That email you found about the smoking? That was nothing. Sinclair used his influence to bypass cargo screening for his private shipments on commercial flights. He was moving undeclared assets. Gold, rare art, things he didn't want customs to see. He paid me 20 grand a month to ensure his bags were never scanned. Vivian froze. This wasn't just corruption. This was a federal crime. This was Homeland Security territory. And Karen? Vivian asked. Karen was his mule, Simon revealed. She wasn't just a mean flight attendant. She was the courier. She ensured the bags got on and off without inspection. That's why she was so paranoid about you. She thought you were a Fed. She thought you were there to bust the operation. Vivienne gripped the drive. The puzzle was complete. Karen Miller hadn't just slapped her because of bias, though that was part of it. She slapped her because she was terrified. She was protecting a criminal enterprise. "You're going to prison, Simon," Vivienne said. "I know," Simon said, tears welling in his eyes. "But with this, maybe I get 5 years instead of 20. Just destroy them, Vivienne. Destroy them all." The raid happened at dawn. Roger Sinclair was asleep in his penthouse, likely dreaming of his own importance, when the front door was breached by a battering ram. FBI search warrant. Agents swarmed the luxury apartment. Rogers, wearing silk pajamas, was thrown to the ground. He screamed, he threatened, he name-dropped the governor, the mayor, and the president. Nobody cared. They found the art in the safe. They found the undeclared gold bars in the false bottom of his luggage closet. They found the texts to Karen Miller confirming the pickups. As Rogers was hauled out of his building in handcuffs, the paparazzi were waiting. But this time, it wasn't a celebrity gossip column. It was the nightly news. Oil tycoon arrested in smuggling ring. Atlantic Skies scandal deepens. Organized crime at 30,000 feet. Rogers looked into the camera. He looked old. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the hollow, haunted look of a man who knows his life is over. Karen Miller didn't get a plea deal. She had assaulted a billionaire, lied to the police, and was an accessory to a smuggling ring. The trial was swift. The evidence was overwhelming. The video of the slap was played on a loop for the jury. The galley audio recording of her saying, "I love making them cry," sealed her fate. Vivienne Carter sat in the back row of the courtroom, watching. She wore white, a symbol of cleansing. When the judge asked Karen if she had anything to say, Karen stood up. She looked small. Her hair was gray at the roots. She hadn't been able to dye it in months. "I just wanted to keep my job," Karen whispered. "I thought I was important." "You were important," the judge said sternly. "You were entrusted with the safety of hundreds of lives, and you used that trust to abuse, belittle, and smuggle. You are not a victim, Miss Miller. You are a bully who finally met someone she couldn't push around. Asterisk 3 years for assault and battery. Asterisk 7 years for conspiracy to smuggle goods. Asterisk concurrent sentences. She would serve 7 years in a federal correctional institution." As the bailiff cuffed her, Karen looked back at the gallery. She locked eyes with Vivienne. Vivienne didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply nodded. Once. A closing of the book. Karen looked away, shame burning her face, and was led through the side door. 1 year later. Atlantic Skies was unrecognizable. Under Vivienne Carter's leadership, the toxic caste system of the airline was abolished. The curtains between first class and economy were removed during boarding. The staff was retrained, not in service, but in empathy. The stock price had tripled. The airline was now rated Hashone for customer satisfaction. Vivienne was walking through JFK Terminal 4. She was flying commercial, as she always did now. She liked to check on her investment. She stopped at a coffee kiosk near the gate. It was a new franchise, Sky High Coffee. There was a woman wiping down the counter. She wore a generic uniform, a visor pulled low over her face. She looked tired. She moved with a heavy, robotic slowness. Vivienne ordered a black coffee. The woman turned around. She froze. It wasn't Karen. Karen was in a cell in Connecticut. It was Linda, Karen's best friend. The other flight attendant who had stood by and laughed when Karen slapped Vivienne. The one who had lied to the police initially before recanting to save herself. Linda had been fired, blacklisted from the aviation industry, and sued into bankruptcy. This minimum wage barista job was the only thing she could get. Linda's hands shook as she held the cup. She recognized Vivienne instantly. The fear in her eyes was palpable. She waited for Vivienne to yell, to make a scene, to get her fired again. Vivienne took the cup. She looked at Linda. "The coffee is hot," Vivienne said gently. "Be careful not to burn anyone." Linda flinched. She understood the double meaning. I will," Linda stammered, looking at her shoes. "I learned my lesson." Vivienne took a sip, tipped $5 into the jar, and walked away toward the gate. She boarded the plane. She walked past seat 1A. She didn't sit there. She walked back to economy, seat 12F, by the window. A young flight attendant, a man with a bright smile and a pin on his lapel that read, "Diversity is our strength," approached her. "Welcome aboard, Dr. Carter," he smiled. "Can I get you anything? Maybe a pillow?" Vivian looked out the window at the tarmac, where the Atlantic skies planes were lined up, gleaming in the sun. "No thank you," Vivian smiled, leaning back. "I have everything I need. I'm just here for the ride." The engines roared to life. The plane began to taxi, and as it lifted off the ground, leaving the drama, the malice, and the Karens of the world far below, Vivian Carter finally closed her eyes and slept. The skies were friendly again. So, what is the lesson here? It isn't just don't slap people. It's that power isn't about how loud you can yell or how exclusive your credit card is. True power is dignity. Karen Miller and Roger Sinclair thought they owned the sky because they had status, but they forgot that status is rented. Character is owned. When you treat people like trash, you are writing a check that karma will eventually cash. And sometimes, that karma comes wearing a hoodie, sitting in seat 1A, ready to buy the whole damn airline just to teach you a lesson. If you enjoyed this story of high-flying justice and billionaire revenge, please smash that like button. It helps the algorithm find more people who need to see karma in action. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. And tell me in the comments, have you ever dealt with a Karen on a plane? I want to hear your stories. Thanks for watching, and fly safe.